All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to explore a classic story that completely redefines the boundaries of identity, passion, and what it actually means to be truly connected to another human being. We're looking at Emily Brontë's absolute masterpiece, Wuthering Heights. But look, we aren't just going to recap a dusty old book for this explainer. We're going to unpack the intense psychology of a relationship that breaks literally every single rule of conventional romance.
I mean, really think about this for a second. Before we even get into the setting or the characters, I want you to imagine an impossible, almost terrifying level of all-consuming love. This is absolutely crucial to understand the emotional stakes we're about to dive into. What if you loved someone so deeply, so fundamentally, that the line between you and them simply vanished? Keep that exact feeling in mind as we go. A lot of people just brush off this 1847 novel set in the isolated Yorkshire moors as your standard story of romance and revenge. But today, we're going to reveal it as something much, much deeper. It is a psychological exploration of two people who genuinely believed they were literally one soul existing in two separate bodies. It totally transcends typical tragedy.
Part 1. Thesis: The Wild Moorland Bond.
So the whole thing kicks off when Mr. Earnshaw brings home this mysterious kid named Heathcliff to Wuthering Heights. Nobody has a clue where this boy came from. He's an outsider, he's poor, and he's treated horribly by almost everyone. But then there's Catherine Earnshaw. She sees him entirely differently. They bond instantly, running wild across the moors, creating this totally private, almost untamed world that belongs exclusively to them, far away from the judgmental eyes of society.
Now, I need you to pay really close attention to this. It's a huge, famous quote for a reason. Catherine doesn't say, "I love Heathcliff." She says, "I am Heathcliff." Just think about the stark distinction there for a second. She's claiming he is fundamentally part of her very identity. He isn't a partner, he is herself. This is the ultimate expression of that one soul in two bodies concept that anchors the entire narrative.
Part 2. Antithesis: Society divides the soul.
So what happens when the real, practical world violently crashes into this unified soul? We get this impossible, tearing tension. On one hand, you've got Edgar Linton. He represents society's rules, wealth, status, practicality. Catherine thinks marrying Edgar is the smart, logical move. But then, on the other hand, there's Heathcliff. He is her untamed nature, her truth, her actual soul. Catherine makes the deeply tragic choice to marry Edgar, hopelessly trying to divide her life between practical societal expectations and the raw reality of who she is. And here is the absolute tragedy laid bare. You just can't have it both ways. By trying to exist as two separate halves, one playing by society's rules, the other following her soul, Catherine sets off a devastating chain reaction. That peaceful, private childhood dynamic, completely destroyed. She thought she could compartmentalize her life, but you can't violently chop a single soul in half and expect everything to be fine.
Part 3. Heartbreak disguised as revenge. When Heathcliff finds out she chose Edgar, things go off the rails fast. It's this incredibly dark progression. First, he bolts in absolute agony. Then he vanishes, only to come back years later rich, powerful, and utterly out for revenge. Finally, we witness this awful descent where love slowly, painfully twists into a toxic, all-consuming obsession.
Look, it is so easy to just write Heathcliff off as a complete monster during this part of the story, but actually, scratch that. He does do monstrous things, but you have to remember why. Beneath every single terrible act of revenge is just profound, blinding heartbreak. He's a deeply wounded man desperately lashing out at the very world that separated him from Catherine. His actions are horrific, for sure, but they're born from a soul that has basically been amputated.
Part 4. Synthesis: Can love survive death?
The devastation keeps rolling, ultimately leading to Catherine's tragic death. But death doesn't end their connection. Heathcliff simply cannot let her go. He talks to her out loud. He's frantically searching the estate for her presence. He literally begs her ghost to haunt him, to drive him completely insane just so he won't be without her. He totally blurs the lines between reality and the supernatural because he refuses to accept the bond is broken. Now, to us today, begging a ghost to drive you mad might sound completely unhinged, but Brontë is doing something brilliant here. She's using these intense, raw moments to pose this massive philosophical question directly to us. She isn't just writing a ghost story, she's testing the absolute limits of this unified soul. And for Heathcliff, the answer to that question is a massive, undeniable yes. In the final chapters, he becomes totally withdrawn, almost like he's sensing Catherine everywhere.
When he eventually passes away, surprisingly, he has this incredibly peaceful look on his face. And of course, the local legends immediately spark up, with villagers claiming their spirits are finally reunited, just wandering the wild moors together. Honestly, whether those ghosts are literally real or not completely misses the point. What matters is what they symbolize for us as readers. First and foremost, they represent a profound connection that flat out ignored the strict rules of social class. Edgar's wealth and status meant absolutely nothing in the end. Secondly, it was an unbreakable bond that completely ignored the relentless passing of time. Years of separation, betrayal, pure anger, none of it could dilute the fact that they belonged to each other. And ultimately, it was a love so impossibly deep and an identity so intertwined that it simply ignored death itself. The physical bodies gave out, sure, but that single soul remained completely intact. So yeah, Wuthering Heights obviously tackles this massive checklist of heavy themes, from the darkness of obsession and revenge to social class, wild nature, and the supernatural. But while all that makes it a masterpiece, there's this one unforgettable idea that totally elevates this explainer beyond your typical Gothic romance.
And it's this. Emily Brontë wasn't just asking how much can one person love another. She was asking something way more profound. It leaves us pondering this beautiful but honestly kind of terrifying question. What actually happens when two people genuinely believe they are the exact same soul? It completely challenges everything we think we know about individuality. And I guarantee it's going to echo with you long after we wrap this up. Thanks so much for diving into this incredible masterpiece with me today.